Hello, my name is Francisco, and before we start the video, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever thought where your language comes from? Or maybe how it has evolved during the passing of years? Or even how the native people of your country contributed to the language that you use today? Well, there was a man who worked his entire life with the sole purpose of investigating these questions. His name was Edward Sapir, and in this video we are going to talk about his life, contributions to linguistics, and some of his theories.
Who was Edward Sapir? Edward Sapir was born on January 26, 1884, in Lemberg, Germany. Son of a rabbi, he moved to the USA when he was 5 years old. He graduated from Columbia University, and he came under the influence of the noted anthropologist Frank Boas, who guided him into the rich possibilities of linguistic anthropology. Sapir was one of the most recognized linguists and anthropologists of this time, known worldwide for his contributions to the study of Native American language and idiom. He wrote his master thesis on Hender's essay on the origin of language and published it in 1907, in which he identified his contribution of replacing the age-old perspective of languages with a new perspective that considered the language as a faculty that had undergone a gradual evolution. He proposed as main elements of such a research program the careful and scientific study of some reflexes in higher animals and a very extended study of all the various existing stocks of languages in order to determine the most fundamental properties of language. From 1910 to 1925, he was Chief of Anthropology at the National Museum of Ottawa, in Canada, where he made important contributions to ethnology. He created ethnolinguistics, the science that studies the relationship between culture and language, writing many articles on the relationship between both. His publications include Language from 1921, which was the most influential, and a collection of essays, selected writings of Edward Sapir in Language, Culture, and Personality, published in 1949. He worked at the University of Chicago in 1925, where while working there in 1929, he stated that the huge amount of indigenous languages from the USA, Canada, and some of Mexico and Central America could be classified into 6 main divisions. Later in his life, he worked at Yale University, where he established the Department of Anthropology in 1931, and which was the place where he worked until 2 years before his death. He passed away at the age of 55, after a rather short life, but fulfilled by the learning and a big part of the contributions to the linguistics we know nowadays.
Sapir defined language as a purely human and not instinctive method of communicating ideas, emotions, and desires by means of a system of voluntary produced symbols. In other words, speech is not an inherent function of human nature as the capacity of walking, which is part of us by millions of years of evolution. Analyzing this definition, we have to consider two principal words, human and not instinctive. Therefore, non-human species do not have a truly specific language as humans. However, they can communicate with each other through sounds and gestures because animals have plenty of inborn qualities to signal their reactions in the environment where they are. But this is not an advanced way of communication as human language do. In addition, language is not instinctive means that speech is not created technically like a formula or by a group of people. Otherwise, language is the result of evolution and convention, and this convention is transmitted from generation to next generation. Then, language is not instinctive because it is acquired by human beings in a constructed and cultural society.
Hello everyone, my name is Brian Monsalves and now I'm going to talk about the theories of the Sapir's investigation. We have two different theories. The first one is the lexical theory and the second one is the grammar theory. But now let's take a look for the first one, the lexical theory. Sapir never looked for the interference between language and culture anywhere on but in the lexicon. He stated that even when nature is continuous, we as human beings good nature into categories such as social classes, educational status, and others. And each culture does the same cutting in somewhat in a different way. This allows people to make up words or concepts to talk about their world, status, or cultural universe. In simple words, language and culture influence each other and change their meaning in relation to the necessity to explain something based on the culture. And as Sapir said in the book of that investigation, human beings do not live in the objective world alone, but are very much at the mercy of the particular language which has become the medium of the expression of their society. The words in which different societies live are distinct words, not merely the same word with different labels attached. Now, let's take a look to the other part of the theory, the grammar theory. Sapir searched for the interference between language and culture beyond the vocabulary and began to discover the roots of cultural regularities in a language grammar, following the usage of the time we can equate language patterns with grammar. In the statements, he again sees the relationship of the language and culture in grammar.
Contributions made by Edward Sapir. American Structuralism. The American structuralism was born from anthropologists who developed structural ideas away from the European work. Thus, they worked on existing languages known as the Amerindian languages that were very different from the European ones, even when these languages did not have writing records or previous inscriptions like the ones that correspond to Europe. American work emphasized the uniqueness of each language's structure, similar to the European tradition. And then we have the features of American structuralism. In order to avoid the dangers implicit in traditional grammar, American linguists had the following aims. First, to describe currently spoken languages, not dead languages. Second, to focus on language formed as a sole objective, thus neglecting meaning to a subordinate place. And third, to perform the description of language using an organized, unprejudiced, and meticulous method which allows the analyst to extract the grammar of a language from a corpus of recorded data in a quasi-mechanical way. Another contribution is the Sapir word hypothesis. It is also known as the linguistics relativity hypothesis and refers to the proposal that the language that one speaks influences the way in which we think about reality. It stands close in relation to semiotic level concerns with the general relation of language and thought, and to discourse level concerns with how patterns of language using cultural context can affect thought. This means that an individual thoughts and actions are determined by the language or languages that the individual speaks. Otherwise, there is a strong version of the hypothesis that states that all human thoughts and actions are restrained by language. But this hypothesis is not as supportive as its weak form, which says that language only somewhat shapes our thinking and behavior. Is distinguished from simple linguistic diversity and from strict linguistic determinism. Finally, to recap, we got a glimpse of the life of Edward Sapir, an anthropologist and linguist who started to be interested in the origin of language under the guide of his professor Francois, and made great contributions to the analysis of language. Sapir describes the language as the result of evolution and convention, with the characteristic that it corresponds to a not instinctive that is passed from generation to generation, where the language and culture influence each other and also influence our thoughts and actions. After watching this video, we hope that you have learned more about an interesting aspect of linguistics and about the man who worked in this topic. See you!